Today we are working with the cylinder head. Get used to pausing this video today. I'll try to remember to tell you when to pause it so that you can get things done, but after a while you should figure out, after you see me complete a step, that you should pause the video and do that step. Don't let the video roll super far ahead of you because it'll just get frustrating. So you've got your cylinder head here. Get that out. And right away, you should pause it while you get your cylinder head out because I'm going to keep talking. So get your cylinder head out, and what you're looking at here are the valve springs. There are 4 visible valve springs here. And underneath these 4 circles here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, these are the faces of the valves. And these valves move up and down. They click open and closed. The valve there's a long stem that goes through the spring, through the cylinder head, and connects to this face. We are going to be removing all of that. In order to do this job today, you need to get your red plastic case out, and you should grab your telescoping magnet. In the red case, so right now I would pause it while you get the red, you should pause it and get the red case out. The red case is what's called a valve spring compressor tool. So this is from a company called Common Motor, and they supply this tool. When you open up the box, when you open up the case, you should see, I think there's 10 items in here. There's the bracket, the big arm. There's 2 threaded rods, 3 threaded rods, 2 longer ones and a short one. And these, I don't know what they're called, so I call them cages. They're like little bird cages. And then up on top here is a little handle that's used to put inside of this hole in this threaded rod. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 items. If you don't have all 10, let me know. Okay, so we're going to need this. We're going to need the little handle. We're going to need both of these longer threaded rods. We're going to need the largest little cage, which is marked with 30 millimeters. And we're going to need the, I think we need the 20, let's see here. Yeah. Let's go with the 30 millimeter and the 25 millimeter cages. That's all we'll need out of here. Close the case, put it aside. And now we will assemble this tool. Both of these threaded rods have this little compression ball right here. Go ahead and put the smaller cage on the threaded rod that does not have a hole at the top, and put the larger cage on the threaded rod that does have the hole at the top. So that hole is for this handle so that you can turn it easy. And now put these in your bracket. Doesn't matter which one goes where. Oh, I did that backwards. This should go through here first. After you twist this one through, then you can put the cage on it. So your valve spring compression tool should look like this. And you should have these two cages kind of far away from each other. You should have a decent gap here. If you open this too much, watch what happens. If I keep twisting it, cage comes off. So give yourself some space here, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be putting this one on top of the valve spring, and this one goes on the valve face. This is going to be difficult to do while filming, but I'm going to do my best. All right, so the smaller of the two cages goes on the valve face. So I'm going to put it right here. And you want it to be dead center on that valve face. So you shouldn't be doing this yourself yet. You should watch me do an entire valve. And then when I start to do the second valve, you can go ahead and try and do it with me. So I'm going to put this on the valve face, and then I'm going to lower this cage onto the valve spring. And once I get it kind of, so right now I'm holding the other one to the valve face with my other hand, which makes this kind of a pain. Once I get this a little bit tighter on here, I can free up my other hand. So here's what you're looking at. Smaller one on the valve face, larger cage on the valve spring. And you can see that it's not perfectly centered on there. Well, now that I have both hands free, I can hold this thing and kind of keep it centered as best I can as I tighten it down. So that little dot in the middle, that circle, that is the valve stem. The two half circles around it are the valve keepers. Those are going to be removed. So what we're going to be doing is turning this cage and compressing the spring down, and as it goes down, it makes these two valve keepers accessible. You take your telescoping magnet and stick the tip of the magnet in there, and it grabs both those keepers out. And then we slowly back the cage back up. We take the tool off and we can remove the valve and the valve springs. So right now, I'm going to do my best to show you how this is done. So I'm going to hold this one here, and I'm going to start turning this, and maybe I can zoom in here. Watch how the valve stem starts rising out of the valve. Okay, that is probably enough. So these two valve keepers, I can knock them loose with my hand. They open up. Take the magnet and pull them both out. immediately put these in a bag. These things get lost all too easily. They're a pain in the butt. So now that I have both keepers out, I can start backing this cage off. I can twist it the other way. Remember, lefty-loosey. So I'm twisting the handle to the left, and I'm letting that spring come back up. See the valve stem disappearing inside the valve spring. Eventually it's going to be so loose that the tool will kind of fall off of the cylinder head. So now I can reach underneath. Well, actually, let's do this in this order. You can take this top off. This is like the valve spring cap. And then you can pull off the large outside valve spring. Then you can pull off the inside smaller valve spring. And then you can push the valve through. This is the valve. This is the valve stem. This is the valve face. So each valve assembly has these items: the valve spring cap, the outer spring, the inner spring, the valve, and the two keepers. 6 items. Now, I wrote the number 1 with a Sharpie on this part of my cylinder head, and I'm going to put all these pieces into a bag labeled valve number 1, because that valve has to go back into that hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Valve 1 is done. It doesn't matter to me which one you're doing first and what you label it. Instead of a number 1, you could put a star there. And as long as you put a star on the bag, so you know that the contents of the star bag go on the star valve on the cylinder head. Okay, so I've already labeled this one number 2. I've already got a bag labeled valve number 2. I'm going to do this one here. So that first valve, you should have just been watching me so you get the general idea of what's going on. And now follow along and keep pausing it. I'll try and pause myself and give you a couple seconds. And doing it while it's on its side. Some people find that easier. I don't. I did that just so you could see what's going on. What I generally do is I hang the cylinder head off of the edge of a table like this, and then I attach the valve spring compressor this way. So I would do it like this. Let's see if I can swing this one-handed. So I would go underneath, and I would make sure that that cage is on the valve face, and then up top make sure that this cage is about lined up with the valve spring, and then holding the cage underneath, holding it right to the valve face, I can start turning this until it kind of attaches itself to the top of the valve spring cap. So now the tool will keep itself on here. This, I find, is the easier way to do it. The problem here is, while you're focusing on twisting this and getting it going, very, very often this thing starts wiggling its way off the edge of the table, and next thing you know, it falls. and that's extremely bad. If this falls onto a concrete garage floor, some of these fins are going to break, and if it falls on your toe, it will break your toe, guaranteed. So if you're working with this hanging off the edge of the table, you kind of have to keep your body pushed against this cylinder head as you're working so that it doesn't fall off. Alright, so now that I have the bottom cage on the valve face, I can hold the spring with one hand, not the spring, the cage with one hand, and I can twist with the other. And the reason I'm holding it is because if I don't, it starts to slide off one way or the other. That's just what happens. So I'm going to start turning this, and you can see the valve stem starting to rise up out of the spring. Okay, now put your finger in there, see if those valve keepers are loose, and they are. I don't know if these are loose enough for the magnet to get them out. Find out in a moment. They are not. I'm going to give this another twist. There. One of the valve keepers fell right off. And so now this one here is kind of stuck. When one's stuck and you can't free it up, if you bend, see how I'm moving this entire tool this way? It kind of gives that valve keeper some room to fall, to like not be so tight against that spring cap. So sometimes you have to wiggle this thing around. Okay, so I got one out. And now the second one is freed and out. So now I'm going to back this off. See how I'm keeping my body against this cylinder head. If you have a helping hand, you know, if you got someone in the house that can hold on to the cylinder head while you operate the tool, that's great. Just make sure that they know their sole responsibility is holding the cylinder head to the table so that it doesn't come off. All right, tool is removed. Now we got the cap. We got the outer spring, the inner spring. Here's the valve stem. Push that through. Voila. This one's labeled 2. So I have valve number 2. Remember, you're counting 6 items when you put them in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Valve number 2 is done. I will do one more, and then I'm going to kill the video, because I think by now you have the general idea of what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to hold this to the valve face. And turn this until it's kind of sitting on top of that spring cap, tight enough that I can take my other hand off. Like that. Okay, I'm going to try and hold this in place and compress the spring. See, it's trying to sneak itself off there. It's just strangely difficult. Okay. You should see that the keepers, that one's loose, this one's kind of loose. Let's see if they're loose enough. One is out, and two, if I push this here, yeah, see how much room that gives me? See how I create like a little gap if I push the tool? Then I can get this thing out, no problem. All right. Now I can decompress the spring. You see the valve stem lowering back into the spring. Actually, the stem isn't moving at all, but it looks like it is. The spring is growing taller. And tool removed. Spring cap. Outer spring, inner spring, valve, done. This is spring valve number 3. Valve number 3. 6 items. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I got one more. I'm going to put this in bag number 4. I'm going to label this number 4, and I'll be done. When you are finished, be sure to put your valve spring compressor tool back in the red plastic case. Put everything exactly where it goes. Make sure it's nice and tight, and close it up. If you have any questions, hit me up.